Let's talk about VA loans with Mr. George Wise from Summit Funding. So, George, super excited to have you again. And we know that you are a connoisseur when it comes to VA loans and know all the ins and outs. So, one, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
First, I'm honored to be here once again. Always a privilege to be with the Premier Home Advisors. I've been doing mortgages coming up on 15 years now, I believe. Pretty much the second job I've had out of college. So I was an underwriter first for a year, then I got right into mortgages. Been doing it ever since. Fun fact, the very first purchase I did 12 years ago was VA. So I actually started off with VA. VA is not as scary as most people believe. And I am excited to share that with you guys today.
Awesome, awesome. So this is really going to be a Q&A session where we just go through some common questions that we've heard, as well as getting questions from the participants in the Zoom call, as well as the participants that are on Facebook Live. So if you do have questions, type them in the chat. We got the whole team here making sure that we get your questions answered about VA loans. So first, what is a VA loan?
So a VA home loan is a loan for a veteran that has served a specified amount of time. And that amount of time is dependent upon the type of time you've done. So whether it's active duty, whether you've seen war zone or reserves. So that's who a VA loan is for. And it's different for each one. Reserves is 8 years, active duty is three and some change. And if you've seen wartime, you qualified right away.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, cool. So why would someone be excited about qualifying for a VA loan? What are the benefits of it?
Everything. There's no monthly mortgage insurance. The interest rates are the absolute lowest in the market from what we typically see. It's 100% financing. Now that means no down payment. That does not mean no closing costs. There's a scenario I saw once where one of our vets, and let me back up first, any vets on here, thank you first and foremost for your service. We really appreciate all that you've done and that you do for our country. There's one vet that I've done a loan for, a friend of mine now. However, he was injured in the line of duty. Well, he now is required to have a wheelchair most of the time. He can still walk some, but not often. Well, he had to build a home that fits his disability because he couldn't find the right one. The VA gave him an additional $75,000 to fit the home with the required disability, I guess, fittings that they needed for the home. Wow. So there was a stair lift in the home. They made the doors double doors, so there's more than enough space for the wheelchair, and a few other small nuances that really fit the home for the vet. And they gave him a check for $75,000 to cover that on top of the VA loan.
Wow. Okay. Perfect. What other questions we got? I feel like we might be seeing some questions in the chat already.
Yeah, actually, we have a question in chat, and that question is, are widowed spouses eligible for VA loans?
Yes, that is correct. Widow spouses, as long as the vet qualified for a VA loan, the widow spouse does now maintain those benefits themselves.
Okay, great. And hey, George, when it comes to VA loans and multiple purchases, can you talk a little bit about that? I have some clients who've spoken with me just kind of about, they already have a house that they purchased with their VA loan and they're considering getting into real estate investing. Can a VA loan be used for investing? Do they have to go a different route? Is there any opportunity to get multiple properties with a VA loan, or are there restrictions?
So yes and no. You can use your VA benefits more than one time. Right? VA has recently lifted the maximum amount that you can use your VA loan for. So what that means is you have what's called bonus entitlement. If you look at your COE, your certificate of eligibility, it says $36,000. So most people think you can only use it one time, or you can only get up to 75% more than $36,000. That's not how it works. We have an internal calculation that we use to determine your eligibility. However, most recently, the VA said, hey, listen, we're not worrying how much they've used already. If they want to get another home for a primary residence, they can. So you can always use your VA benefits to buy another home as a primary. If you have a home that's VA already, you can rent that home out. No one's going to bother you about it. All right. Then you can buy your new home using your same VA benefits without a problem.
Good stuff.
No.
Awesome.
So you mentioned the COE, Certificate of Eligibility. What does that process look like to find out if you are eligible for a VA loan?
Most vets can go on to, I think it's Web LGY, and pull their own COE if they want to. If not, we'll pull it. They send us a copy of the DD-214. We don't always need it, or NGB-22 if they're National Guard. We don't always have to have that form from them to get the COE. Oftentimes, with the vet's name and date of birth, we can pull one ourselves. If for some odd reason, you know, if the vet got married and changed their last name, we had a guy recently that was born in 1918, but the DD-214 had 1919 on it. And back then, they didn't do a good job of keeping records because it was, you know, 100 years ago, which I've done along for a vet that's over 100 years old. I never thought about that. So with that being the case, we had to go the extra mile and get a few other documents, but it wasn't terribly hard to do. The best thing about getting a COE from the VA is, since they care so much about their vets, you can pick up the phone and call them. It's never that 45 minutes or an hour long wait. I think I've never waited more than like 3 minutes to get someone and say, hey, here's my vet, here's my situation, what do I do? And they'll tell you exactly what to do to get the COE. They're so helpful. It's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Hey, George, I have a follow-on question to that. So people that are in DOD or government employees, what is that form called? It's a DD something, right?
DD-214.
The COE. DD-214. Okay.
DD-214 is a form that we'll get typically to get the COE. Also, now, if you're National Guard, it's called an NGB-22.
Okay. Actually, I have someone that's in the National Guard that's considering getting approved this summer, so that's great.
So that's something super important to know. Most lenders aren't familiar with the NGB-22, so they'll order the COE and tell them, hey, we can't do it, we can't do it. And they just don't know they're not using the right form to get it.
Wow. Okay. Well, sounds like you were very knowledgeable.
So you would say it's very.
What was that, Vincent?
I would just say, so it sounds like it's very important to make sure you have a lender that's familiar with VA loans.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct. And if you can't find the form, we can help you track down where to get most forms from. I have an internal little notepad that I've kept of scenarios that we've hit roadblocks of getting the COE in the past and what we did to find the ways to get the COE. So when I see those roadblocks again, I just reference that and say, hey, if you do these steps, we'll get it taken care of. For our older vets, I am always a part of the conversation with the VOE if I need to, excuse me, the COE, if I need for them to call the VA and get something, as opposed to saying, hey, call them and say X, Y, and Z. I'll do a conference call with them together to make sure that they're understanding clearly what we need.
Awesome. So, George, I know that you mentioned that it's 100% financing, so they don't have a down payment. However, you would still have closing costs. Is closing costs something that a buyer could get covered by the seller? Like, is it possible for someone doing a VA loan to come to the closing table with little to no money?
If they're working with Premier Home Advisors, clearly not only little to no money, however, I've had people get money back at the closing table. One of the clients I've helped, Mr. Cathcart, he went into a David Weekley to build a home. They told him that you already have a VA home loan, so you can't get another one. He bought his home. They made him put down $8,000 or $9,000 because of the amount of the home it was. He put the money down. They were paying his closing costs. I think Wells Fargo maybe had denied him, another lender. Then I got the deal. We closed him once the home was complete, and he got back all the money he put down plus the money he paid for his appraisal at the closing.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, I just closed a VA loan last month, and they actually got money back at closing as well. So It is definitely a joy when you can tell your clients, like, hey, you're going to get a check and a house. So we have another question in the chat. Go ahead, Vincent.
No, I was just going to say, I think all of us have closed VA loans where our clients have gotten money back. So that's a really great thing for veterans and active duty military folks if they are in a situation where they can possibly get their money back. So that's cool.
Absolutely.
Very much so. Very much so. So we have another question in the chat. The question says, you also mentioned 75% over COE, Certificate of Eligibility. Can you go more into detail about that breakdown and what that looks like?
So that used to be a thing. As of this year, it's no longer a thing. Now, the VA used to limit the amount of home that a vet could provide. Now, when I say limit the amount of home, you would think that they might limit at 200,000-300,000. No, what it used to be is the county limit for a maximum loan amount, or the city limit for a maximum loan amount. They will cover 100% up to that, and anything above and beyond that, the vet would have to put down 25%. Well, the VA has recently come back and said, hey, you know what? We're going to cover the whole thing. We're not going to do that 25% loan guarantee thing anymore. So if you want to use your benefit and you can qualify for a $1 million loan or $1 million home, the VA says, hey, we're going to cover $250,000 of that for you as a vet.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Perfect.
And if you want to buy a $1 million home, go in VA, call me. I'm ready for you.
Absolutely. Call George and call Premier Home Advisors. We'll get you taken care of.
Exactly.
All the way.
So what are common roadblocks that you've seen with VA loans?
Well, previous roadblocks would be vets that had entitlement charged off, but with the new guidelines, I don't believe we're seeing that anymore. I've seen some people that have gotten out of the service slightly earlier. I bumped into a guy recently that did, I think, 6 years and a month, and he missed it by a matter of days. And somehow he worked out the opportunity to like re-enroll for a short period of time to get his benefits, which I think that was a very unique situation to him. Credit is always a factor. Now, in a non-COVID-19 world, we'll go down to 550. During COVID-19, we're at a 620. We can do VA manual underwrites. The good thing with the VA manual underwrite is in the event they don't automatically approve the loan, or you don't get the automated approval for the loan, the VA has a pretty open mind about approval. I've had a chance to chat with their internal underwriters before, and they say, hey, listen, George, at the end of the day, we want to put our vets in homes that can afford them, and that's not going to create a foreclosure for them, because we don't add any additional stress to our vets. Those are some of the things we've seen before that are typical roadblocks. But the VA, they help out a lot. They're very open-minded. And disputes, the VA hates disputes on your credit report. They absolutely hate disputes. So if you're disputing items in your credit report, the chances of you getting a straight approval with VA, slim to none. Doesn't matter what your score is.
Wow. Okay.
That's good to know. Good to know. Hey, George, we have a couple other questions here in the Facebook chat. So one person said seasoning. Does that apply to VA loans?
Yes. So there's different types of seasonings with VA. First thing they want to look at, the biggest one is employment. They want to see that you've been employed for 2 years. Now, let's say you were in college and you graduated, you have your time done, then that makes sense. They want to see a 2-year history, typically speaking, at least 6 months on a job, preferred a year on the same job. Especially if you change industries, we're gonna probably want to see a year in the same line of work. That's for the employment part. That's the one they care about the most. From an asset point of view, we don't want to see you making crazy deposits into the bank. If you deposit $20,000 in the bank out of nowhere and you make $30,000 a year, we're probably going to have some serious questions about, hey, where did that money come from? And there's no real short sale seasoning on there. The VA short sale foreclosure seasoning is more like a open for discussion type rule. It's not a hard no, but it's not a guaranteed yes. It's open for discussion. What led to that? The number one question. Why did you have a short sale? Why did you go into foreclosure? Those are the things that we want to know about. Same with bankruptcy. A lot of people didn't know that while you're in a Chapter 13, you can still get a VA mortgage while you're actively in a Chapter 13. So most of the seasoning questions outside of employment, I like to call them hard suggestions as opposed to firm rules.
Awesome. Great information.
Yes. Let's see, we have another question. George, what states do you work in? Can you handle VA loans outside of North Carolina?
So I personally do North, South, and soon to be Georgia. However, Summit funding is nationwide. So if I can't do it, I can refer it to another colleague of mine. I am on an internal group where we discuss scenarios, deals, and we chat twice a month. And we refer strictly within our group within Summit funding. So if you have a deal, not only can I refer it, but I'll be a part of it the entire time, start to finish.
So you know a loan officer that's as amazing as you with VA loans in other states.
I mean, I don't think there's another loan officer as amazing as me, like this, period. Yeah. It's like God made me, and he's like, oh my God, let's make normal people. No, no, we have some seriously amazing loan officers with VA. What we do in our group is we spread the wealth of knowledge. If we learn something new, if we pick up different tricks or tactics, we share them immediately with one another so we can all thrive in the market. So I know some amazing LOs across the nation.
Great.
I know that you mentioned some changes, like you said, you used to be able to work with 550 credit score, now it's 620. What other changes have you seen with VA loans when it comes to everything going on with COVID-19 and the shelter in place and things like that?
So the biggest changes we've seen thus far is that now the minimum score is a 620, and between a 620 and a 640, we want to see the back end, meaning not only your housing, but things that are also on your credit report, plus any child support, alimony, or separation maintenance, or IRS debt. We want to see the debt to income ratio under 45%, under a 640. Over a 640, we kind of, if we get an approval, we don't care. I think we closed one. As a matter of fact, I'm closing one Tuesday. His ratio on the back end is 64% or something like that, which from a wow factor point of view, the average high end ratio is about 50%. So we have one of those closing. He's at a 670 score, I believe. So under a 640, we have a few caveats. Over, we don't care. Secondly, self-employed. You know, our real estate partners and individuals that are self-employed, due to COVID-19, we understand that the state of the market has restricted some of the things and some of the income for a lot of people. You know, if you run a restaurant, we understand that you may have had a loss of income. So we need to see business tax returns more so than ever, as well as business bank statements to see the deposits going in from your self-employment source of income. If there's no deposits going in, we can't say that you have income currently until we start seeing you actively producing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those are the biggest ones.
Okay, awesome. And so what about refinancing? I know that you mentioned earlier the rates are really low. The VA loan rates tend to be the lowest that are available. So can someone refinance into a VA loan if they're eligible, if they didn't have one before, or can someone refinance their VA loan to another VA loan to take advantage of that lower interest rate?
That's correct. So you can, there are two types of VA refinances. There's an EARL, which is an interest rate reduction loan. So we don't necessarily have to get an appraisal on it. We do a worksheet. All of your closing costs can be rolled right into the loan. If you have a 5% rate, throwing out random numbers here, and you do an EARL now, the chances are your rate's going to come down somewhere closer to 3%, wow, saving people a ton of money. I think recently we're averaging about $347 a month in savings, wow, from the EARLs that we've done, and roughly $280 in general for any refinance. You have VA cash out, which is between 90 and 100% of the loan value that you can take out of the home. So if you want to do a VA cash out refinance, you can pull out some of your equity. I have a guy right now that's doing a cash out refinance. He's going to take out $50,000 and put that towards buying an investment property. So, you know, and with his current rate of 4.75, he's going to take out the $50,000, put towards an investment property, and his monthly payment is still going to be lower than what he's paying right now.
Wow.
I want to add something on to that. So I just had a client to do an EARL refinance for a VA loan, and he is saving. Actually, he's one of the clients that got a refund at closing as well. So pretty much no money out of pocket to buy, and he actually just refunded, and he's saving $300 a month. So those are really good for any veterans that may already have a loan.
Awesome.
Great.
Perfect. All right. So just want to cover a couple more questions and then we'll start to wrap up. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat on Facebook or in the chat on the Zoom, just so we can be sure that we get your questions answered. So I want to go back to, you mentioned that a widow could use their spouse's VA loan benefits. Is there anyone else who didn't necessarily serve that could take advantage of those VA loan benefits?
Nope, just the vet and their spouse. You know, another thing is if vet and girlfriend want to buy a home together, if the vet cannot qualify on their own for the home, we can't do the loan. The VA is very specific about that. It has to be vet and spouse, not vet and anyone else. And if the vet has someone else on the loan with them, the vet has to qualify by themselves every time.
Okay. That makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Brittany, do we have any other questions in the chat, or did you guys have any other questions?
No other questions in the chat. I have a question. Hey, George, what would you say is the best piece of advice from the lender standpoint for that first-time home buyer who's kind of getting the education on how to purchase a home from us? If they're getting a VA loan, would you recommend them speaking with you first or reaching out to see if they can get their certificate of eligibility first? What route do you think they should go? Because it can get pretty overwhelming for first-time home buyers.
I always recommend reaching out to me first, and let's see how much of the legwork I can do for you. Because like you said, buying a home, it's very overwhelming. It's a huge deal. Let me take a lot of that pressure off of you and then tell you, hey, we should worry about X, Y, or Z, because if not, it's like going on WebMD. If you look on WebMD right now, I guarantee you, if you sneeze twice and look on WebMD, you're going to think you have the coronavirus. Like, that's just how it works. How do I know this? It happened to me last week. I worked out on Tuesday. I woke up on Wednesday. My chest was like, oh my gosh, so tight. I thought I was going to die. I knew I had caught the coronavirus until I was like, oh, I worked out yesterday. However, had I consulted a true professional or just had thought about yesterday, I wouldn't have panicked. I would have missed the worry. So I tell people all the time, let me tell you what to worry about. Call me, discuss what you are concerned with, and I'll tell you if you should be concerned or not. It's better to consult an expert as opposed to try to figure it out on your own, especially with such a big deal.
I say that's pretty fair.
So,
Sounds good.
yeah. So I have a follow-on to that. First of all, it is always good to realize that you're going to have a team working around you, right? So you won't be doing it alone. It's good to reach out to that lender first. But I have a question around it too, so that kind of follows on. How much money should a person have if they want to use a VA loan, just typical or average, say for instance, a $250,000 house?
For a $250,000 house, ideally they would have between $4,000 and $5,000 to make sure they're able to cover closing costs in the event the seller's not paying closing costs. The good thing with VA is sometimes we can get creative to get the buyer into the home. When I say creative is, you know, rates are so low right now that even if you don't get the 3.375, you might be able to take a 3.75 rate, and then we can give you up to 1% of your purchase price back as a credit towards closing costs. You know, and then after 6-7 months on time payments, you just do an EARL to drop your payment back down to where you wanted it in the first place. So we do look at being as creative as possible to help individuals that it makes perfect sense. You know, you're paying $1,800 a month right now in rent, but you haven't saved the money for your closing costs just yet. We can get creative up front to get you into the home. So that way you can come back and do an EARL and drop your rate and get the lower payment too.
So what you're saying on a VA loan, you only have to wait 6 to 7 months before you refinance? Possibly?
6 or 7 months before you do an EARL. And the biggest thing is we want to see that you've made the payment on time. We want to see 6 on-time payments. That's really what we're looking for, 6 on-time payments.
Okay.
I have two more questions. One about appraisals and one about the timeline. So from the time that you go under contract on a house to the time you close and get the keys, how long does that normally take with a VA loan?
I just had this conversation with someone else a moment before. The timeline really depends on the buyer for the most part. Now, VA appraisals are longer than your standard appraisal just because we don't get to pick the appraiser. We request the appraisal through the VA portal, and the VA picks an appraiser. They take care of everything. We have little to no communication until the appraisal comes back. What I do like about the VA appraisals is the appraiser has up to 10 days to get it back to us. So if we get super busy like we are right now in the industry, there are some appraisers quoting 2-3 weeks at other lenders. We can say VA 10 days, and they have to stick to that most of the time. That's the longest part of the VA process, in my opinion. With Summit, we're going to underwrite the loan, we're going to order title, so we're just waiting on the appraisal to come back. And I typically order the appraisal the same day that you sign your disclosures. I like to disclose loans within 48 hours of you going under contract. My number one goal with your buyers is to get them fully approved as quickly as possible. So a couple weeks down the line, then they can shift their worry to how am I going to decorate the rooms, switching over power, movers, all the other stuff. I want to take the mortgage piece out of their mind from a worry point.
Gotcha. There are many. Last question. There are many things we have to know as real estate agents as we're navigating through VA purchase. So when it comes to VA appraisals, doesn't the appraiser look for the house to be in a certain condition? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So for the most part, the appraiser wants to see the home is in livable and safe condition for the vet. They're going to look for things like mold, any things that might be damaging, steps 3 or more with no handrails. Running water, HVAC working, the power is working. They're going to make sure the vet can move in. And one thing I wanted to hit on is that as the real estate agent, you should always know, as you guys know, that you have to get a termite inspection, which the sellers are supposed to pay for. Sometimes it's worked around one way or another, but you always have to get a termite inspection with any VA home loan.
Good stuff. Good information. So George, I want to make sure we don't have any other questions that we have not answered, whether they be in the chat or any other questions from the agents or anyone on Facebook. So any other questions you guys have?
I'm not seeing anything on Facebook. I guess we'll give them a little second to kind of get a question in if they have one, because it's a little delay on Facebook.
Perfect.
Currently, no questions.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. And George, I do want to start wrapping up just so that we can make sure that people start to enjoy their holiday weekend and their lunch break. But tell us, what is the best way to get in contact with you to start the process with a VA loan or with any loan to start the process of buying a home?
So the best way, I am old school. I like phone calls. You can call me or the team. If you want to call me directly, my cell phone number is 980-254-4938, or the team at 704-895-8770. You can also shoot me a text message. If you shoot me a text message, I'll probably respond back with a few questions before I send you the link to do the application via the mobile website, which I'm a huge fan of because it keeps you up to date with every single step that we do. If you're kind of like, hey, I need a pre-approval right now, shoot me a text. I'll send you the link. I can oftentimes get you pre-approved in about 20 or 25 minutes if you need it right away.
Wow.
That was minutes, not hours, right?
That's minutes.
Okay.
If you need it right away.
So if you're standing in a new construction house or in a house and you realize this is the one,
shoot me a text. I got you.
I love it. I love
Me
it.
too.
Awesome. Well, George, we want to thank you again for just sharing your knowledge. It sounds like the VA loan, the overall goal is to make sure that they're taking care of those veterans and making sure that they're getting them in the home, getting them in the right home, and helping them as much as possible. I mean, 100% financing, no down payment. You can possibly have the seller cover your closing costs. And as we've all experienced, seller or buyers can get checks at the table. That's pretty exciting. So I definitely thank you for sharing your knowledge and everything with us today.
The pleasure is mine. I will talk to you guys soon. If you have a question, whether you're working with me or another lender, shoot me a text, give me a phone call. I'm here to help one way or another. If you have a question, if you're unsure about something, just let me know. I don't have to work with you to answer your question. I'm here for you regardless.
Awesome. Any
Great.
closing words?
Yes,
What?
thank you guys. Thank you so much for your time, George. You were very informative, and I actually learned a lot on the call too. And it looks like based on Facebook's, we have some other agents in other states that are telling us that they learned something through this. So we really appreciate it. Everyone that's watching, please follow us on social media. We love to give back and kind of figure out ways that we can continue to provide education for our community. Follow us, Premier Home Advisors, KW, on Facebook and Instagram. We have a lot of giveaways, a lot of things coming up. But what I'm most excited about is this holiday weekend. How about that?
Hey, Brittany, the agents that are on from other states, if they would like to do a Zoom, Facebook Live as well, have them reach out to me. I would love to either connect them with one of my lending partners, or I'll jump on and do it myself for them. But by all means, if they have a question, have them reach out and we'll jump on it.
Awesome, George. And hey, can you say, tell us your number one more time?
Sure. It's 980-254-4938.
4938.
You didn't have my number?
No, I'm looking at the Facebook, and so someone asked for that, so I went ahead and just
We
typed
talk
it
all the
in.
time.
I know. I just couldn't go out and go to my contacts. That's all. We wanted the people to know. We wanted people to hear the number again. Hung up.
Awesome.
But
Vincent, anything from you?
I am good. Jordan, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with that. And again, we are here available to help with the real estate search.
Hey, once again, I'm honored to be the speaker for such a distinguished team. Super honored.
Awesome. And we appreciate you, sir. And everyone, have an amazing holiday weekend. Get some rest, get some relaxation, enjoy some water. If you have cookouts, invite us. We would love to be there. We will remain socially distant and practice safe practices, wear our mask, all of that. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy your day, and we will talk with you later.
Thanks. See you.